Welcome back to Kinshasa Today. Great to have you with us for episode 023.
Good to be here.
We've got a really significant story developing right here in Kinshasa, actually across the whole DRC. It involves former President Joseph Kabila.
It's certainly dominating the headlines, a lot of legal and political maneuvering happening.
Exactly. You're seeing it everywhere. So what we want to do in this deep dive here at Kinshasa Today is sort of peel back the layers.
Yeah, cut through some of the noise maybe, look at what's actually happening, the arguments on different sides, and why it matters so much right now.
Okay, let's jump right in this. The central piece of news, the Senate. They've started a process. And this process could lead to the lifting of immunity for Joseph Kabila, who is, as you know, not just former president, but also senator for life.
That's the core of it. And this wasn't just out of the blue. It officially kicked off Thursday, May 15th, just last week.
Right. And it's based on something specific.
Yes, a formal request, or requisitar, from the Auditor General of the FAR RDC, our armed forces. And that document, the indictment with all the allegations, it was actually sent over to the Senate back on April 30th. So it's been sitting there for a couple of weeks.
And these allegations, they're not minor.
No, not at all. We're talking really serious stuff. Complicity with the AFCM-23 rebellion, which, as we all know, has caused so much devastation in the East.
Complicity meaning what, exactly? What are the specific charges?
Well, the indictment apparently lists war crimes, crimes against humanity, even involvement in massacres of civilians.
Oh.
Yeah. And the judicial authorities, they're claiming he kept ties with the AFC, who they believe are basically acting as a front or proxy for the M23 rebels.
Okay, so that's the accusation side.
Yeah.
But then there's the whole process. It sounds like that's being heavily disputed.
Hugely disputed. This is where it gets really messy, legally and constitutionally. You've got legal experts, plus organizations like ODB, the Public Expenditure Observatory, coming out strongly.
And what are they saying?
They're essentially arguing that the way the Senate is going about this, it violates the law, specifically the law concerning the status of former presidents.
Professor Floorman Matiba from ODP, he's been quite vocal, hasn't he?
He has. His argument, and ODP's, boils down to this. You can't just have the Senate vote to lift a former president's immunity.
No. So what's the correct procedure, according to them?
They point to the law and say it requires a joint session of Parliament. So the Senate and the National Assembly together, acting as the Congress.
The Congress, okay.
And not just any vote, it needs a supermajority. 3/4 of the members present have to approve it.
So ODP's saying the Senate on its own just isn't the Congress, and therefore this whole thing is, well, legally questionable.
That's precisely their argument. They're saying the Senate doesn't have the power to do this alone.
And others are echoing this.
Yes. Felix Momot, who's aligned with Kabila's FCC party, he's also raised objections. He specifically cited Article 104 of the Constitution, and also Articles 3 and 8 of that 2018 law number 8-21, the one dealing specifically with former presidents. He's saying the Senate's actions violate these provisions.
But despite these pretty serious legal arguments, the Senate has moved forward. They've set up a commission.
They have, a technical commission.
Yeah.
And they've given it a, frankly, very tight deadline, just 72 hours.
For what? To review the indictment?
To review the indictment, yeah, and submit a report with their findings. Though there are also whispers, reports suggesting this commission might also be tasked with auditing Joseph Kabila.
Auditing him,
Yeah.
even though he's been out of the country for, what, over a year now?
Exactly. That part's a bit unclear, but it's being reported.
And has everyone in the Senate actually agreed on this approach?
Doesn't sound like it. There seems to be a split. Some senators are backing the Senate-only process.
But others?
Others are arguing, no, this needs to go to the full Congress for a vote. And they're apparently citing Article 224 of the Senate's own internal rules to back that up. So division even within the Senate itself.
So this isn't just dry legal stuff, is it? There's clearly a lot of politics swirling around this. It feels like it's adding tension.
Oh, absolutely. You can't separate the legal arguments from the political context here. Many people see this as a deliberate attempt to weaken Kabila.
Whose influence, even out of office, is still significant through his party, the FCC.
Right. His political bloc remains a major force, so weakening him personally, legally, it has obvious political implications.
And the timing. People are asking questions about that too, aren't they?
They are. Some observers suggest it's no coincidence this is happening now, while some of Kabila's prominent allies are also facing their own legal troubles. It looks, to some, like a concerted effort.
So how are people reacting? out on the street political figures?
It's really varied. You've got a lot of, well, indignation from many citizens and legal analysts. They see it as political games, potentially damaging our institutions.
Concerns about bending the Constitution.
Exactly. Worries that this sets a dangerous precedent. But on the flip side, you have voices, particularly civil society groups in the East areas that have suffered so much from the violence linked to M23 and others.
And for them?
For them, this might feel like a chance, finally, for some accountability, a potential path to justice regarding the violence.
A very different perspective.
Completely. And then, of course, you have Kabila's supporters. They're strongly condemning it.
Calling it politically motivated.
Yes, politically motivated. An attack, an attempt to suppress opposition. Pretty much what you'd expect.
Any other notable reactions?
Jean-Claude Katende from ASADO, the human rights group, he also thinks the Senate's approach is legally incorrect. He worries it will just discredit the Senate.
Okay. And Nehemi Malanya, Kabila's former chief of staff.
He spoke out too. He actually tried to link this whole affair to the peace efforts in the East, suggesting this move somehow undermines democracy in those efforts.
Interesting connection. Now, you mentioned ODP before regarding the Senate procedure. Are they concerned about other things too?
They are. They've also publicly criticized the Ministry of Justice.
For what?
For seizing some of Kabila's assets, properties, other holdings. ODT argues this was done before any judgment, any conviction.
And they see that as illegal.
Yes, a violation of due process and his basic rights as a citizen, regardless of the accusations.
And Professor Muteba, what's his proposed way forward? Is he just criticizing?
No, he's also calling for something else. He's really emphasizing the need for national cohesion, dialogue
between...
Specifically between Joseph Kabila and President Tshisekedi. He thinks they need to talk directly to sort out their differences.
Did he comment on those rumors about Kabila being in Goma?
He did. He basically dismissed them, saying ODP has seen no proof. He stressed that the justice system needs evidence, not rumors, especially for charges as serious as collusion with rebels.
Right. Evidence-based justice.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And what about those ongoing consultations by the president's special advisor? Is ODP hopeful about those?
Not really, no. Professor Muteba expressed skepticism. He believes they won't lead to a real national unity government. Because, in ODP's view, key political players have been left out of the process. Excluded.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. We have the Senate initiating this process against a former president, Joseph Kabila.
Highly contentious.
Sparking major legal debates about the procedure, Senate alone versus the full Congress vote.
Absolutely. Big questions about constitutionality.
And layered on top of that, or maybe underneath it all, are clear political motivations and significant political fallout being debated across the country.
That sums it up well. The core tension is stark. You have these incredibly grave accusations on one side, and on the other, deep disagreement about the right, the legal way to pursue accountability for a figure like a former president.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Thinking about the bigger picture. What does this mean long-term for, the rule of law here in the DRC, for political stability?
Huge questions. And how does it affect the chances for peace in the East? That's always hanging over these political battles.
Definitely something we all need to watch very closely as it develops.
For sure. It's a pivotal moment, potentially, for Kinshasa and the whole country. The outcome could really shape things for years.
Well, that's all we have time for on this deep dive from Kinshasa today. Hopefully that helps make sense of this complex situation. Keep yourselves informed, Kinshasa.
Stay tuned.
We'll be back soon with more on the stories impacting our city and our nation.